What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Week 3 is in the books. Week 4 is almost upon us, so you know what time it is. I've got my weekly NFL game picks outright versus the spread along with our locks of the week, so let's get right into it. Kicking things off on Thursday Night Football, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles at the Green Bay Packers. And the Eagles here, 1-2 after a tough, close loss versus the Detroit Lions last week, where just maybe all those injuries caught up to them. Whereas the Green Bay Packers still undefeated, 3-0 after taking care of business versus the Denver Broncos like we predicted. And now in this matchup, it's going to be interesting what we see, I would say, more so from the Packers, because the Eagles still banged up. Now Alshon Jeffrey is set to return, but Deshaun Jackson, another big playmaker for that offense, expected to miss this game. The reason I'm focusing in on the Green Bay Packers, however, is because defensively, they look to be one of the most improved units in the NFL. Top 10 for sure, I would say. But there's people that are saying, well, how much of that is due to the competition at the quarterback level that they've gone up against? Mitch Trubisky, Joe Flacco, Kirk Cousins. Now, Carson Wentz is in another class compared to those guys. And how much is he going to be able to take advantage of this defense? Is it for real? Now, like I said before, I believe it is. But on the flip side, you've got this offense of the Green Bay Packers that still hasn't played up to its potential. Now, you could argue that's still because of Matt LaFleur. This, early on in the season, he's still kind of gelling with the team and figuring out his play calling. But Aaron Rodgers still hasn't had that classic Aaron Rodgers game that we all know he is capable of. Davante Adams hasn't been as heavily involved as we would like, and the running back situation has been more so of a running back by committee, whereas I think a lot of people can see that Aaron Jones is the better running back, and if the offense were to commit to him, it could get a little bit more potential out of that running attack. Now, moving forward, I do expect, at least in this game, Davante Adams to be heavily involved. Now, probably we're still going to see a split share of Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. LaFleur has said as much, so I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. But basically, if I'm breaking down this game side by side offensively, I'll take the Packers at home, Rodgers over Wentz. Now, again, anytime you have Carson Wentz under center, you're not going to be counted out of any football game. I don't care what the situation around him is. He's that good. That's why I anticipate this to be a closer game than some people probably expect. Defensively, the Eagles, especially up front, are very stout, so the Packers might have a long day when it comes to rushing the football. But as a whole unit, I'll take the Packers. I think they're more well-rounded. They're healthier, which is also very important. So I'll take them outright at home to win this game. However, on the spread, -4.5. Like I said, with Carson Wentz under center, I expect this game to be close and Carson Wentz to minimize the gap when it's all said and done late in the fourth quarter. But that Green Bay defense should come up clutch. That's why on the spread, I'm actually going to take the Eagles, but we're riding with the Packers outright. Next, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the Atlanta Falcons. Both these teams 1-2 coming off of losses. The Titans losing to the Jaguars, where offensively they couldn't get much going and they were kind of dominated defensively. Then the Atlanta Falcons, tough road loss versus the Indianapolis Colts. They dealt with injuries and then just inopportune turnovers. But a remedy for that should be a return back home to Atlanta, where this Falcons team plays better under that dome. Matt Ryan is more consistent at Atlanta as well. And the big question here for the Falcons so far has been the gelling of that offensive unit. We've seen uncharacteristic turnovers by Matt Ryan in red zone situations. Is the offensive coordinator switch being a big deal so far? Kind of looks like it. The rushing attack hasn't really gotten it going, even though Devonta Freeman did have a better day last week. However, Ito Smith got banged up. Keanu Neal banged up, out for the season with an Achilles. So Falcons already struggling with injuries of their own. However, I do think they should be victorious in this matchup. This Titans offense, we've said it before, they're not consistent. They're low scoring. Marcus Mariota, he just doesn't perform the same week in and week out, just not reliable. And you're going to need to be able to put up points versus the Atlanta Falcons, because even though they've struggled, they're 1-2, they can put up points with the best of them. Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Austin Hooper, Devonta Freeman. And whether Ito Smith plays or not, Devonta Freeman should get some nice usage. I don't necessarily think that'll, however, translate into success, because the Tennessee Titans defense is good. If there's something that's going to keep them in this game, it's going to be that defense. But I do believe eventually it will break. And Matt Ryan, even though he struggled, I believe will have success airing out the football. I believe Calvin Ridley is going to be way more involved this week. Only one catch on what I believe was one target last week. So look for that to go ahead and increase. I'll take the Falcons to win this game. I think they pull away late. Something in the realms of 27-17 probably, if I had to put a number to it. On the spread, Falcons -4.5. I think that spread should be higher. I know the Falcons have gotten off to a poor start, but offensively, they're just so much better than the Titans. So I'll take them outright, but also on the spread. Moving on, we've got the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. Divisional clash between two undefeated teams. Both these squads 3-0. The Patriots took care of business versus the New York Jets last week, but what would you expect? Third string quarterback for the Jets. The Patriots have been absolutely explosive defensively and offensively. Buffalo Bills also getting a victory. Tough, close win over the Cincinnati Bengals, but that defense got the job done. Josh Allen got the job done when he needed to as well. However, I think these winning ways end for the Buffalo Bills in week 4. I know this is a home game for them. I know that defense has played well, but the New England Patriots are just on another level of competition compared to the other teams they have gone up against. Defensively, they're very good. Offensively, no Antonio Brown. It doesn't matter, guys. Antonio Brown, obviously no longer a part of that Patriots squad, but they've still got Julian Edelman, Philip Dorsett, Josh Gordon, James White, Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, and most importantly, Tom Brady. Now, Julian Edelman did get banged up last week versus the Jets, but he is expected to suit up for this game. So I'll take the New England Patriots. It could be a little bit closer than maybe some people expect, but I do believe the Patriots will pull away here. I just don't see the Bills putting up more than 14, 17 points. Whereas for the New England Patriots, I don't see them putting up less than 20 points at a minimum. So I'm going to go ahead, even though it's a road game for the Patriots, even though the Bills have looked really good so far into the season, one of the surprise squads so far, I'm going to go ahead and take the Patriots. We've seen that Josh Allen still has a lot of room for improvement as a passer, whereas Tom Brady is obviously on another level there. And Bill Belichick, his game plan usually take away the best weapon of the opposing team. I expect him to limit the rushing abilities of Josh Allen, really make him air out the football, and I think that's going to lead to some struggles. I expect the Patriots defense to have a pretty decent day. All in all, I'm taking the Patriots here outright. The spread kind of reflects that. The Bills +7.5. I'm going to go ahead and take the Patriots on the spread. Like I said, I think they're going to go ahead, put up more than 20 points. I think the Bills are going to be right around that 14-17 mark. I think it's going to be right around a 7 to 10 point margin of victory for the Patriots, so I'll take them on the spread as well. Next, we've got the Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens, another divisional clash. The Browns coming off a loss Monday night to the LA Rams, where, again, we had a lot of question marks with the play calling, with the offensive execution, and with Baker Mayfield's play as well. Not what you want to see there. On the flip side, the Baltimore Ravens 2-1 coming off their own loss, but arguably against the class of the AFC and the Kansas City Chiefs. And give the Ravens credit, they made that game interesting late in the fourth quarter. However, I will say the narrative that the Ravens might be one of the best teams in the NFL, one of the best offenses in the NFL, was probably a little bit too early considering the defenses that they played early on into the season. But again, to give the Ravens some credit, Lamar Jackson has looked better as a passer. However, in this divisional clash where the Browns, maybe a lone bright spot for them has been the play of that defensive line, specifically Myles Garrett, I don't know if we're going to see that same success here from Lamar Jackson. That's why I think this game will be closer than people expect. but I still like the Baltimore Ravens. I still think that Lamar Jackson as that young dual threat quarterback is going to be tough to prepare for the Browns, and they've still got those weapons down the field. I think Marquise Brown will have some more success this week, but more importantly, I think this Baltimore Ravens defense will make it another long day for this Cleveland Browns offense and Baker Mayfield, who, if he continues to hold on to this football for so long, he's going to continue to get sacked, get hit, and until I see some success from all those weapons that were so touted in the offseason, you know, I have to go with the team that's looked better so far in the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I do think the Browns, as the season goes on, they're going to start to figure some things out. But right now, until we see signs of that, with the offensive line being a question mark, with Baker Mayfield not having taken that next step compared to what we expected would happen after the end of last season, I'm going to stay away from them. I like the Ravens outright. However, on the spread, -6.5 for the Ravens, I'm going to take the Browns here. This being a divisional clash, I think it's going to be, like I said, closer than people expect, something in the realms of, 27-20, and that only being a half-point separation between that spread of -6.5. I'm going to go ahead, play it safe, and take the Browns on the spread. Moving on, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Detroit Lions. Technically a battle of two undefeated teams here. The Chiefs 3-0, the Lions 2-0-1. Now, the Chiefs took care of the Baltimore Ravens like we previously mentioned. Patrick Mahomes looked amazing. He's pretty much matchup proof. No matter what defense he faces, that offense is going to deliver. The Detroit Lions had a nice little victory, 3-point win over the Eagles, one of the pleasant surprises of last week. And that's been the kind of start that the Lions have had. Honestly, they could very well be 3-0 if it wasn't for a blown lead over the Arizona Cardinals in week 1. But again, that level of competition compared to the Kansas City Chiefs is very different. That's why, even though the Lions have come out strong so far, I have to give the edge to the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, it doesn't matter who plays running back there. We've seen it now, whether it's Damian Williams, LaShawn McCoy, Darrell Williams, whoever it is, they're going to be given their opportunities, and they're more than likely going to succeed because of the threat that Patrick Mahomes poses and what he can do and just open up things for everyone on that offense. Whether Tyreek Hill plays or not, which the expectation is he won't this week, again, that hasn't been an issue. Sammy Watkins, Hardman, doesn't matter. They've got the weapons. As long as Patrick Mahomes is under center, he makes everyone viable. Right now, he is on pace to probably repeat as NFL MVP the way he started off, but it's still very early. Regardless, I like the Kansas City Chiefs in this game. That defense can be taken advantage of. I will say that. Matt Stafford should have a decent game. We'll see how that game plan evolves as they go along, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions have to abandon the run before they know it, which could be a problem for them. I know Matthew Stafford has had some success. He should have had a better game than he did last week. There were some drop passes on the side of their his pass catchers, so do keep that in mind. But again, this is just a whole another level of competition. The Chiefs' offense just too good. I'll take them over the Lions to win this game on the road. The spread +6.5. Look, again, the Lions might have a favorable defensive matchup here versus that Chiefs defense, but I think the Chiefs' offense is just too good. They're going to pull away. They're going to pile up points, and the Lions won't be able to hang with them. So I'll take the Chiefs not only outright, but also on the spread. Next, we've got the Oakland Raiders at the Indianapolis Colts. The Raiders 1-2 after pretty much getting dominated by the Minnesota Vikings. Then the Indianapolis Colts coming off a very nice victory at home versus the Falcons. Now another home game for them, and surely the Raiders compared to the Falcons should be an easier out for the Colts. Now I will say the two big question marks: is Darius Leonard going to be available, and is T.Y. Hilton going to be available? T.Y. Hilton, didn't end up playing the entire game last week, exited pretty early on, but the Colts still found a way to get it done. Jacoby Brissett was extremely efficient, and I think he can have similar type of success versus this Raiders defense that isn't all that special. I do think this Colts defense could have a nice game here. They're, again, one of these units that don't sleep on them. The Colts defense does have some talent. I think Marlon Mack versus this Raiders defense as well should have a nice game. And in these matchups where it's lesser competition, even though, again, the Colts are without Andrew Luck, they should be favored because Jacoby Brissett just has to play mistake-free football, and the pieces around him should aid him in getting the job done. I think that's exactly what's going to happen here. The Raiders, even though, they've had some success airing out the football, I don't think that's necessarily going to translate into points. I wouldn't be surprised if they pile up the yards to guys like Williams and Waller, but we'll see if they actually capitalize on those opportunities. Josh Jacobs has struggled a little bit as well compared to his hot start after week one. I think he is a big part of this offense. He needs to get more targets. He needs to alleviate some pressure from Derek Carr. But again, I just don't think on the road this is going to be the week to do so. I'm going to go ahead, take the Colts outright. We'll see. Maybe a guy like Adam Vinatieri makes it interesting with some misses, but he seemed to get right last week. That could potentially be the biggest talking point come next week for the Colts. But hopefully it's not, because that could end up being a full season-long point of conversation. But regardless, I'm going to take the Colts outright at home. I'll take them also on the spread, -6.5. Right now, I just think the Raiders are one of these teams that are going to be vying for probably a top 5 pick when it's all said and done. So I'll take the Colts outright and on the spread. Next, we've got the LA Chargers at the Miami Dolphins. The Chargers 1-2 after a tough loss to the Houston Texans. And the Miami Dolphins 0-3, kind of how we expected that game versus the Dallas Cowboys to go. The Cowboys ended up resting their stars. That's how bad the Dolphins were. And even though Josh Rosen did provide maybe a little bit of a spark, it still didn't result in a victory. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the case again here versus the Chargers. Home game for the Dolphins. That's nice, but I don't think it's going to matter all that much. The Chargers offensively, they're just on a whole nother level to the Dolphins. Phillip Rivers, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, Justin Jackson, and now Melvin Gordon. That's the big news of the week. Ending his holdout. Going to report probably Thursday. Now, he won't be eligible probably to play in this game, but moving forward, expected to rejoin the Chargers earlier than was anticipated. But look, even without Melvin Gordon, the Chargers should be favored by a bunch in this game. And that's what the spread reflects, +16.5 for the Dolphins. That's a pretty large spread. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dolphins actually cover, and that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to actually take the Dolphins on the spread, just because I do think the Chargers, they've looked sloppish from time to time these last 2 weeks. We've seen them struggle offensively from time to time, but even if it does happen, I think they're the better team. They're going to find a way to win. I wouldn't be surprised if they make this a game that's closer than it should be. I wouldn't be shocked by that, but again, they've just got too many superstars that are on another level compared to the Miami Dolphins, who have clearly already called it a season. At this point, they just want to see what Josh Rosen has, whether he could be a part of their future. But expect them to be selecting a quarterback in 2020. Right now, the Chargers are the team to pick in this contest. Even if they're 1-2, this should be their get-right game. So I'm taking them on the road outright. But like we said, the Dolphins, that spread is just way too high. So +16.5, going to take the Dolphins there. Continuing on, we have got the Washington Redskins at the New York Giants. The Redskins 0-3 after getting dominated by the Chicago Bears. The New York Giants 1-2, getting their first victory in thrilling fashion versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. One of the more exciting games of last week. Daniel Jones, what a rookie debut. Rushing the football, passing the football. But obviously the big news for New York, that high ankle sprain for Saquon Barkley, expected to miss 4 to 8 weeks. Now, ultimately, I don't think that's going to be that big of a loss for this game. Obviously, season long term, it's going to be a big deal. But the Redskins can be exploited. And I actually like the Giants at home to get a victory here. I think Daniel Jones provided a nice spark. Now, again, whether he should be the quarterback or Eli Manning, that's a conversation for another time. But the way he played, the spark he provided, it's going to be his show moving forward for the season, more likely than not, unless, something inexplicable happens. So I like Daniel Jones in this matchup more so than potentially whoever plays quarterback for the Washington Redskins because, look, Case Keenum was questionable heading into this week. Now, the expectation is that he will play, but if the Redskins struggle, I wouldn't be surprised if Dwayne Haskins makes an appearance here. Now, the Redskins weren't going to put him in versus that Bears defense. No shot in hell. That just would have been a punishment. But this is a very favorable matchup for the Redskins and for the Giants. Both these defenses, nothing really to be afraid of. So this could potentially be closer than people expect. It could be a potentially high-scoring game as well. That wouldn't surprise me here. But at the end, I'll give the advantage to the home team. I'll give the advantage to the offense that I think has more playmakers. I don't think Wayne Gallman is going to be on the level of Saquon Barkley, obviously. But with guys like Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram and the young, athletic Daniel Jones, I'll give the Giants the advantage here. The spread -3.5 in favor of the Giants. I think that's a spread that's low enough where I feel confident to go ahead and take New York there. So I'll take the Giants outright and on the spread. Next, we've got the Carolina Panthers at the Houston Texans. The Panthers 1-2 got their first victory of the season behind a great performance by Kyle Allen, the undrafted quarterback replacing Cam Newton. And the Houston Texans coming off their own very nice victory over the LA Chargers. They're now 2-1. Now, this home game for the Texans, even though a lot of people were very impressed by what we saw in Kyle Allen, let's not forget that was versus the Arizona Cardinals, one of the worst defenses in the NFL. The Houston Texans definitely have some guys like, hey, J.J. Watt that should make it a long day for Kyle Allen. And I really don't think he's going to have the same success that we saw last week. Now, the big news for the Panthers is that Cam Newton, that leg injury, that ankle injury could be more serious than expected, potentially surgery. And now, obviously, they're going to try and avoid that, but it could be the Kyle Allen show for the rest of 2019. And if that's the case, well, this offense, the potential that they had with a healthy Cam Newton, obviously, that is, definitely not as high. But I will say I was impressed by Kyle Allen. It's been a long time since I've seen the Panthers put up 30-plus points and a quarterback stay in the pocket and put together some accurate passes. But again, that was versus the Arizona Cardinals, so I don't expect to see the same type of aerial performance like we did versus the Cardinals now with the Houston Texans being this week's opponent for Carolina. I think they're going to rely on a simple formula with Kyle Allen. It's going to be a heavy dose of Christian McCaffrey, and then going to the guys you trust most. So Greg Olsen, we saw him have a big day. Probably a guy like DJ Moore, and then Curtis Samuel as well. Defensively, if the Panthers want to win this game, which, look, I think it's possible. I just think right now the Texans, with the offensive weapons they have, should be favored. I like them outright, but if the Panthers want to win this game, they need a dominant performance by that defense. We haven't really seen that so far this season. If it were to happen here, again, I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers won, just because the Texans do have a tendency from time to time struggle for that offensive line to have issues. If they can make Deshaun Watson really scramble and run and get hit, then that's going to be the formula for success for the Panthers. But speaking of Deshaun Watson, he's another quarterback that is very good on his feet, that can also go ahead and throw the football to some incredible weapons in DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, Kenny Stills. So I think we've seen the Panthers struggle with those type of quarterbacks before. Hell, we saw it just last week with Kyler Murray, who did have a lot of success rushing the football, but it kind of had to be abandoned when the Panthers built a little bit of a lead. I think Deshaun Watson is going to have similar type of success. And this improved defense of the Houston Texans compared to the Arizona Cardinals should be enough to beat the Carolina Panthers. So I will take the Texans to win this game. I think it'll be close for the most part, but then probably a mistake or two by Kyle Allen. Some inexperience in there as well is going to allow the Texans to pull away late in that game. Something maybe around the realms of 27-20. We'll see. But on the spread, Texans minus 4.5. So I'll take them there as well. Continuing on, we have got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the LA Rams. The Bucs 1-2 after a devastating loss versus the New York Giants. They had that game in their hands for pretty much an entire 4 quarters, and then they drive down the field after the Giants take the lead and then miss a 34-yard field goal. You know, that's almost the length of an extra point, but man, when it's not your day, it's not your day, and hopefully that's not an indication of what the season has in store for the Bucs, but the way things have gone for them, maybe it is. On the other side, though, the LA Rams, it's all great for them as they're 3-0. They dominated the Cleveland Browns. They shut down Baker Mayfield. They shut down Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. And I think they could potentially do the same here versus Jameis Winston because, look, this defense is on a whole nother level compared to what the Bucs faced last week. Now, that was definitely a get-right game for Jameis Winston, for Mike Evans, for O.J. Howard even. But this Rams defense is not going to be a cakewalk like that of the New York Giants. I wouldn't be surprised if they absolutely shut down the receivers of Tampa Bay and if they make it a very long day for Jameis Winston. I think this has the potential of being a blowout. I look for the Rams to have a big day from their defense, like we said, but also through the air, guys like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Brendan Cooks. Now, offensively, it's going to be really interesting all season long to monitor Todd Gurley because through these first 3 games, it hasn't looked good. It didn't look good last week versus the Cleveland Browns. Look, as far as we know, he's still healthy, but obviously it's been a reduced role in that offense. Sean McVay says he needs to get him more involved, but, you know, I think a lot of people are saying we'll believe it when we see it. And this probably isn't the week to go ahead and see it because this Tampa Bay defense has been stout against the run. So that's the reason why I think the Rams are going to rely yet again on the arm of Goff and on the hands of those wide receivers. Either way, though, this should be a victory for the Rams. I like them outright on the spread, minus 9.5. I'll take them there as well. I think this is one of the more straightforward games and victories of this week. Continuing on, we've got the Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals divisional clash. The Seahawks 2-1, first loss of the season at Seattle of all places versus the Drew Brees-less Saints. But ultimately, Alvin Kamara, too much to handle. The Seattle defense didn't show up. Doesn't help that Chris Carson struggled holding on to the football, pretty much rendering that rushing attack useless. That's going to be a storyline to follow moving forward. And then on the flip side, the Arizona Cardinals, 0-2-1, losing to the Carolina Panthers. They started off pretty well in that game, but at the end of the day, that defense just wore down and couldn't make enough stops. And unfortunately, it doesn't get any easier because the Seahawks have got the weapons to put up points versus the best of them. And I do think this is a get-right matchup for Chris Carson. It helps that Pete Carroll said that they still believe in Carson. They're going to give him opportunities, and I think they're going to go to him early and often in this game to give him a rebound in that rushing attack rebound. But I'll be honest with you guys, even if this rushing attack struggles, I still think the Seahawks win this game behind a great effort from Russell Wilson because I think he can more than shoulder the load versus the Arizona Cardinals defense. I expect a big game from Tyler Lockett, Will Disley, because apparently the Cardinals have forgotten how to cover the tight end position. However, I will say upside for the Cardinals, they still have, offensively speaking, some guys that can present defensive matchup issues. Kyler Murray, that dual threat quarterback. David Johnson, the pass catching dual threat running back. Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk. The problem is they're going to be inconsistent with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach. But for them, it's going to be that defense that causes them long-term issues this season. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the difference in this game. I think the Seattle Seahawks have got the better defense. They've got the more experienced group offensively. So I'm going to go with them outright. What's interesting here, the spread plus 4.5. You would think it's should be higher, but with these NFC West divisional clashes, it's become to be expected that the struggling teams can go ahead and give these top-notch NFC West teams like the Seahawks and the Rams a contest in usually a lower scoring close game. That's why the spread makes sense. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cardinals cover the spread here, but I just think the Seahawks right now are a lot better than the Cardinals, more well-rounded. Usually I'd go ahead and probably take the Cardinals on the spread. I just think right now that defense is too porous. So for that reason, I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks outright and on the spread. Moving on to another divisional clash, we've got the Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears. Both these teams 2-1, coming off dominant performances defensively, and also for the Vikings offensively as well. The Chicago Bears, Mitch Trubisky had a bounce-back performance offensively versus the Redskins, like we predicted in a bounce-back game in general versus a very favorable matchup. The defense dominated, and now a home game for the Bears. This one should be interesting, but honestly, even though a lot of people probably picking the Bears here, as the spread suggests, -2.5, I feel extremely confident taking the Vikings. Look, right now, both these teams have great defenses. The Bears probably a little bit better, and, they've got the home field advantage, but I don't think it's enough to go ahead and swing the scale in their favor completely. The biggest thing here is going to be the Vikings offense versus that of the Chicago Bears, because Mitchell Trubisky, look, he had a good game versus the Redskins, but it was against the Redskins, and even though he had 3 touchdowns, he still didn't look all that good. He still missed routine passes, and this Vikings defense isn't going to allow those same type of performances from Trubisky. They're going to make him work for it, and I think there's going to be several turnovers here. I think this is going to be an ugly game here, folks, actually. I think it's going to be lower scoring than you expect, especially on the side of the Bears. I don't think they put up more than 14, 16 points, honestly. The Vikings, I think, put up at least 20. It could potentially turn ugly if the Bears defense is on the field for too long. Dalvin Cook right now absolutely dominating opposing defenses. Even though Kirk Cousins hasn't looked all that great, I still have way more faith in him than Mitchell Trubisky. And he's got a lot better offensive weapons in Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. So even though Cousins and Trubisky have both struggled this year, I just have so much more faith in this Minnesota Vikings offense. The play calling has been rough for the Bears, but what can you do? Matt Nagy realizes the weak link of their team is their quarterback, which usually isn't a good thing. And I think that's going to be the downfall of the Bears this season. I've been saying it since the end of last year. Trubisky isn't a franchise quarterback. The only way that the Bears win this game is if Kirk Cousins just absolutely just goes bananas and has 5-6 turnovers, something like that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to stick to a game plan of rushing the football. And Dalvin Cook, I've got more faith in him than I do David Montgomery or Tariq Cohen or Cordero Patterson, whoever the Bears decide to use, even though it's pretty clear it should be David Montgomery. So I'm going to go with the Vikings on the road here. I like them to win this game. Pretty confident in that. Both these teams have strength in defenses, but the Vikings, the much better offense. So I'll take them on the road to win outright. The spread -2.5 for the Bears, so I'm taking the Vikings on the spread as well. Next, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Denver Broncos. The Jaguars 1-2 after a nice victory over the Titans. Then the Denver Broncos 0-3. Tough loss on the road versus the Green Bay Packers, but I don't think they ever really had a chance in that game. However, favorably speaking, now going back home in Denver in the month of September, that's been a tough environment to get a road victory in. Now, I realize the Bears did that a few weeks ago, but that probably should have been a victory for the Broncos if you look at that game closer. Now the Jacksonville Jaguars, we know that it's been Gardner Minshew mania as of late, but will he have the same type of success versus this Denver Broncos defense that plays pretty good at home? Chris Harris absolutely shut down Devontae Adams last week. We still haven't quite seen Chubb and Von Miller play up to their potential. I think this could be that game, and I actually kind of like the Denver Broncos at home. I think Emmanuel Sanders could have a nice bounce back game. If Philip Lindsay continues to be more of that lead back type of running back, I also think that's better for the Denver Broncos. I think he has some better pass catching abilities than that of Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman did get banged up, but he still continued to play versus the Packers. It'll be interesting. I do think it's probably going to be a lower scoring game here, folks. Something in the realms of 20 to 17, maybe even less. It's just not a favorable matchup really for either one of these offenses that aren't electric to begin with. So I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going to go with the Broncos to win outright, but I'm going to hedge my bets and go with the Jaguars on the spread. It's -3.5 for the Broncos. So if it's within a field goal, Jaguars will hit on that spread. Getting to Sunday Night Football, we've got the Dallas Cowboys at the New Orleans Saints. The Cowboys 3-0 after dominating the Miami Dolphins like we all expected them to. At one point, even resting their starters, so that's all you really need to know about that game. While the New Orleans Saints coming off one of the most impressive victories of Week 3, beating the Seahawks in Seattle behind a dominant performance from their superstars. Now the question is, can they do the same versus an improved defense in the Dallas Cowboys? Now look, I think a lot of people probably have the Cowboys winning this game, but I don't think it's a slam dunk pick because this is going to be a hostile environment and this is going to be a better defense than Dak Prescott has had to face all season long. So I do think that it's not going to be a surprise if Prescott struggles, if Zeke struggles, and this game is lower scoring than some people expect because even though there's a lot of superstar power here, Teddy Bridgewater, even though he earned the victory last week and it was a high scoring affair, he didn't do anything all that amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong. He did exactly what the Saints wanted him to do, and that's get the ball to his playmakers and not make mistakes. And that should be the formula for them moving forward. He did that to a T last week, but is it going to be enough if he just sticks to that in this week's contest versus the Dallas Cowboys, where I think defensively they're better than the Seahawks? So again, I don't necessarily think that just sticking to that is going to get the Saints this victory. I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to have to do more than just that. And it's really going to come down to, can he make enough plays versus this Dallas defense? Now look, ultimately, Drew Brees not playing in this game is what I see as the difference maker. And that's why I have to take the Dallas Cowboys. I do think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be lower scoring, like we said, than people expect. But I'm going to go with the starting quarterback in Dak Prescott that's looked decent so far. I expect him to come down to earth a little bit here, but I still got more faith in Dak than I do Teddy Bridgewater. So give me the Dallas Cowboys to go on the road and win this game. But I will hedge my bets here again. New Orleans Saints plus 2.5. Very low spread, almost a pick 'em here. It's very tough to go Cowboys outright and the New Orleans Saints on the spread. I'd probably go ahead and avoid looking at this game on the spread if I had to. But since we're going to be focusing on it, I'll take the Saints on the spread. I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow pull off a shocking victory here. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be close. I think both these teams have a chance to win this game at the end. But the Dallas Cowboys right now are just a better rounded squad because of the injury to Drew Brees. And finally, getting to Monday Night Football, we've got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Divisional clash. Both these teams 0-3, go figure, but that's what happens when on one side you've got a squad that can't play defense and has been on the losing side of a couple of close contests, week 1, last week versus the Bills, and then with the Steelers losing their starting quarterback for the entire season and having to rely on a backup in Mason Rudolph, who pretty clearly is just that, a backup. Now, last week, if it wasn't for that long touchdown run by Juju Smith, that offense would have looked a lot worse than it already did. It was that defense that really kept them in that game. Now, overall, I do think the Steelers probably have a slight advantage here. Offensively, I like the Bengals a lot more, but just because of that defense, and how much it's struggled, I think the Steelers will have success offensively. So I look for Juju Smith and James Conner to have big games here, specifically James Conner, because what's a good way to take pressure off your young quarterback? Well, that's run the football. So I expect tons of usage from James Conner. And then defensively, you have to give the edge to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think probably this is a series that ends up being split at the end of 2019. But right now, I'll stick with the home team. And I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers outright. The spread -4.5. I'll actually go with the Bengals on the spread because we've seen more often than not, they keep the games close. I think that'll be the case again here in this divisional clash. So I'll take the Steelers outright because, again, this defensive matchup is very friendly for them. But on the spread, I think the Bengals keep it close, but ultimately come up short. So I'll take the Bengals on the spread. So with that, we wrap up our pick'ems. Now looking at our locks of the week, we start with the New England Patriots at the Buffalo Bills. I will take the Patriots all day here. They are much better offensively. They're just better, well-rounded than the Bills. I think they're going to force the Bills to beat them through the air if that's even possible. And I think Josh Allen will struggle with that. Give me Tom Brady and the Patriots on the road. Continuing on, Chiefs at the Lions. This is going to be a common theme as we go on throughout the season. The Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes are an offensive juggernaut, even though the Lions technically undefeated. Nice start to the season. I think they just don't have enough firepower to hang with the Chiefs. So I'll take Kansas City on the road. Continuing on, LA Chargers at the Miami Dolphins. I don't know how much needs to be said here. The Dolphins are not going to be favorites in a lot of games they play as well. They shouldn't. The Chargers, offensively, they are so much better than the Dolphins. I think this is a get-right game for them. I expect them to dominate Miami. I'll take them to win here. Moving on, Tampa Bay at the LA Rams. Give me the Rams all day. This is one of the easiest picks of the week, I believe. The Rams at home with that defense. I think they're going to make it a long day for Jameis Winston. They're going to force turnovers. They're going to shut down those wide receivers. They've played very well in the secondary. So Rams at home behind a good effort from those pass catchers and Jared Goff. And finally, Minnesota at the Chicago Bears. Give me the Minnesota Vikings. Both these teams can play good defense, but offensively, the Minnesota Vikings are leaps and bounds better than the Chicago Bears. Kirk Cousins or Mitch Trubisky, I'll take Kirk Cousins 10 out of 10 times. Even though he struggled as well, I think that offense is just so much better. So I will take the Minnesota Vikings to beat the Chicago Bears. And with that, we wrap up our locks of the week as well. And as always, let me hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree with these picks? Along with any other questions you guys might have, let me hear them. And as always, if you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.